In Phoenix, haven't you, today?
That was a
Yeah, it was. I think it was when I joined. It said you were
hello.
recording. So I don't know if you want to
Okay.
stop and start again.
Oh, welcome everyone to another Climate Emergency Centre webinar. Tonight we've got a really interesting one. Lorraine Inglis, an old activist friend, has come together to come tonight to talk about the Weald Action Group, and they actually got a UK Supreme Court ruling which is going to affect things into the future, which is, you know, hopefully going to provide a legal precedent that's going to change a lot of things in the future for the destruction of the environment. So I'll let Lorraine explain more of the details. Thank you so much for coming. It's a long time since we hung out on the streets of Paris Climate Summit.
Oh my
And a few
goodness.
other
Oh
places
yeah.
on the front lines.
Yeah.
Lorraine,
Well,
take it away. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on here. I hope, as I know a lot of people have come on and they want to hear the whole detail of the win, and they will, but I'm going to give an overview of Weald Action Group, you know, how we got here. I'm going to be showing a couple of videos. So as he said, I'm Lorraine Inglis. I'm the co-founder of Weald Action Group. And back in 2013, my life was completely turned upside down by a company called Quadrilla coming to frack quite close to where my mum lived. I ended up living on a protest camp for 3 months. And as I said, my life has never been the same. I started to organise with Frack Free Surrey, Frack Free Sussex, Frack Off London. And at that time, and I'm going to go into this in detail because there are Lincolnshire and Yorkshire people on here, and I think this is a good opportunity to make people aware of what's going on. In 2015, there was an infrastructure act that was brought in by the government that changed the definition of fracking, and it made it really hard for us in the southeast to be able to campaign because we weren't allowed to use the F word. It was a very clever move. It was actually industry led. We've done the research behind that. It's from in European by the industry. They came up with this definition that uses up a lot of fluid. And I'm just going to say, like, the technology means that they can lay down gels or powders. Sometimes it's called a proppant or acid squeeze, and to begin the process of stimulating the shale, which is like tight stone, and thus meaning they don't have to use as much fluid, and it comes in line, like falls in line with, like, fall outside the definition of fracking. Now here in the Weald, which is where we got our name, we have a type of substrate which they can acid frack, and it's called Cumbrian clay. But obviously they can drop that word frack, exactly how they can do in Lincolnshire. And I want to share all of those links in North Yorkshire too. So I want to share those links so that you are aware of that. And yeah, it's happening in Wreesall, Scarborough, West Newton. So I'm going to pop into sharing my screen. I've got a few little slides as we lead up to where we are right now. Let's hope that this all works. And okay. Can you see all of that?
It's coming. It's black screen saying Lorraine Inglis has started screen sharing, but it's black at the moment. Double. There we go. Yep, bingo.
Okay, I just need to find my presenter view.
Brilliant.
Just bear with me. Okay, right. So yes, in 2016, there was a few of us involved with the Horse Hill campaign, and it came up with the idea of creating a networking like gathering across the south, that we were going to have discussion and skill shares. And we quickly came up with the name Weald Action Group for, like, the Eventbrite. And despite wanting to change that name, it actually just stuck. So this is our first Weald Action Group gathering in October 2016. You can see we are Tina 2. We were supporting Tina Rothery in an injunction. We held quite a few in-person meetings, and we had training on things like direct action, know your rights, how to lobby your councillors, public speaking. And we did this because we saw that as individual groups, we were practically all doing the same across the southeast in our tiny little silos. And it was like, why are we doing this? Let's just come together and, you know, network. So we moved to the Zoom through a pandemic, and we really slowed down the skill shares. One of our successful working groups was our acidization working group, which is a really sexy title. We had a report called Everything You Want to Know About Acidizing, another sexy title. And this is a leaflet that we produced, which basically covers what I was just talking about previously, about how fracking is under the radar here in the UK. And yeah, we worked really hard to raise the awareness around this, and you know, we kind of run down a few industry rabbit holes, but yeah, I felt we were quite successful in raising awareness around acidization. So at the time, I'm just going to move my Zoom thing. So at the time, there were, when Weald Action Group came together, there was a lot of planning applications for sites at Horse Hill and Brockham, Bletchley in Surrey, Billingshurst, Balcombe, which is where the flagship protest, the fracking protests, Markswell Wood, and also Isle of Wight. Campaigners had already seen off the oil site at Wisborough Green. So many of us protested at these sites, and even though at these pictures at Horse Hill show quite a few people, to get folk there every day to stop the trucks was really hard. And we had a lot of people who came along to these, who did lock-ons, like protests, camps. And, you know, a lot of these people had basically post-traumatic stress disorder from all of these protector camps. And I'm, you know, give a big up to all of the anti-fracking protester camps that happened across the country. And you can see in this bottom right-hand corner here, you know, like the evictions that eventually end up. So, but we were obviously doing it well, because in 2018, UK Oil and Gas, who's the operator at Horse Hill, hit us with a persons unknown injunction. And it included, for the first time, an economic tort, which injuncted us from anything where the predominant intention is to injure the claimant's economic interests. Now, that could have actually meant us even delivering leaflets or having a meeting. And we worked really hard. We gathered a lot of people around this, and we fought it for 3 years, and we beat them in the courts. We got 7 major aspects of the injunction removed and reduced it to practically nothing. And whilst all this was going on, we made this video, which will give you a really good background to Horse Hill. Now, it's 4.5 minutes long, but bear with me because it's worth a watch.
Our beautiful Surrey, Sussex countryside now contains a blight which threatens to spread its stain right across southern England. Oil firms are claiming that the Horse Hill oil site near Gatwick Airport is the key to unlocking a bonanza for onshore fossil fuels. This is the story of our battle against these oil companies, and Horse Hill is the front line.
You know, these deposits extend over 1,200 square miles or more of the Weald. So if we can establish that we can put a commercial development together, then clearly, you know, you can see incremental step outs over quite a large area.
Oil companies like UK Oil and Gas want to open up sites across southern England, starting in the Greenbelt with Horse Hill and Broadford Bridge, where I live, and then new sites at Dunsfold and the Isle of Wight. Another company, Angus Energy, has taken on controversial sites like Balcombe. Local communities like mine want to protect the countryside and climate from this expansion and the threat of full-scale fracking.
We have a right to stand up and say no to this industry and this company. They cannot dictate the law to us. This is gateway fracking at this site, and they are digging for hard-to-reach fossil fuels that should be left in the ground.
This type of oil deposit very much depends on being able to drill your wells almost back to back, so it becomes very much like an industrialized process, because that's how you get the improvements in costs and efficiencies.
Ooh.
So generally you have to drill.
Oh, what happened there? Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's good.
Sorry,
Do you want
sorry.
to
Don't know what
share the
happened
screen
there.
again, maybe?
Did you hear that okay?
We heard it. We got up to the diagram where you can see all the, you know, the fracking fractures.
Did you have the whole screen or?
Yeah. Try and play it again, and yeah, keep going. Play again.
Okay.
A lot of wells
Can you
close to
see
each
that?
other, so you can maintain
Yes.
a certain level of production. If we get to that 1,000 barrels a day, that will make Horse Hill the second largest oil producing field in the onshore UK. And clearly we're looking to drill multiple wells, so, you know, several thousand.
We've probably all heard now about fracking. Here in southern England, UCOG claimed to have identified world-class oil in the unconventional Kimmeridge Shale reservoir. This type of well stimulation doesn't fall under our government's official narrow definition of fracking, so it's not covered by any moratorium. The fact that it still involves the use of high pressure with acid and chemicals too means the environmental impacts are just the same. The whole of the Weald is riven with faults. It's believed that it was drilling into a fault in 2016 that caused the temporary rush of oil that gave Horse Hill the name Gatwick Gusher. Drilling near faults can lead to contaminated water or earthquakes, like the one which coincided with UCOG's return to Horse Hill in 2018. On top of worries about greenhouse gas emissions and earthquakes, local people at Horse Hill are facing increased daily movements of heavy goods vehicles, bringing greater air pollution and frequent threats to road safety. And this could go on for decades. UK Oil and Gas have been developing the Horse Hill site since 2014, and Surrey County Council has supported their plans all the way, including approval in 2019 for a further 20 years of commercial production.
On climate change, that it completely neglected recent developments in government policy and the fact that we're now in a climate emergency, as both the government and Surrey County Council themselves have accepted.
There's no doubt that success for the drillers at Horse Hill would fund the beginning of extreme oil extraction, with all its hazards and a long-term threat to the climate. That's why I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with so many others up against this industry. UCOG has threatened us with injunctions, which can mean big fines, even jail, but they won't shut us up. This threat to our countryside, to the climate, and to our individual freedoms is very real. And that's why we will continue to fight them, fight their plans and their injunctions.
So that was a video that we put together, and we're moving on to the next step of our fight. So it talked about in that video, let's step back to September 2018, and we spotted online a scoping opinion for 4 oil wells totaling 6, projecting the extraction of over 3 million tons of oil over the next 20 years at Horse Hill. So we decided to hunt down whether we could go for a judicial review, and with the advice of our future barrister, he said that we had grounds. Now, we were at the time, you know, as you can see from that video, that we were at the time using failure to assess indirect greenhouse gases through environmental impact directive, the failure to consider the climate change impact, the development in the green belt, and the one where we thought it would matter the most was the earthquakes. You know, you saw from the video, like all of the news, we had a swarm of them, and that was ever since Horse Hill development started drilling in 2018. So we were ready to go. We had a few public meetings under our belt to inform locals what was happening. And when September 2019 happened, the planning application, you can see us having a demo outside. Despite Surrey County Council declaring a climate emergency just months earlier, they approved their application. And I was talking about this the other day, but I recall when Ernest Mallet, he's a Tory councillor, he said in the meeting that if UCOG could potentially take the council to court if they refuse the application. And I so nearly wanted to shout out, say, don't worry, if you do, we'll be seeing you in court. So we immediately gave our lawyers the go-ahead, and we launched our crowdfunder, and we had many fundraising initiatives. We really did pull through. You've got here in the left-hand corner, there's Pat Smith. She was a grandmother. She walked 100 miles around all of our oil sites. We documented it all, did a lot of social media. She raised over 5,000. In the middle, we had a couple of people who cycled around Spain. They raised about 3,500. We had, you can see on the top right-hand corner, folk and flamenco against fracking. Had a load of people, music. We had someone sell artwork. We had, you know, obviously our own crowdfunder going. I can't see the one in the middle. Yeah, there was just lots of initiatives. We ended up fundraising for £65,000, and the Supreme Court aspect was 45,000, which was funded by Law for Change. So when we launched this, we had parties immediately attach themselves to us. Obviously, UK Oil and Gas, which was the operator at Horse Hill, and the government on the council side, and Friends of the Earth came forward on our side. But we had a lot of setbacks in the lower courts. Our first application for judicial review in January 2020 was turned down. We appealed. Then we got refused again in February 2020. It was actually by the judge of the same name, but different spelling. And we were just not expecting this. You know, when we were determined, and our lawyers agreed that the grounds of our claims remained arguable. So in July 2020, Judge Lewinson agreed, and our date was set in the High Court for November 2020. And Justice Holgate, I won't say an awful lot about this man because he has redeemed himself recently, he dismissed our case. And so we're back in and we appealed again. And in the Court of Appeal hearing we had in November 2021 under 3 judges, and we learned that in February 2022, we had a very unusual split decision. 2 of the 3 judges held that the council had acted lawfully, but we had a really strong dissenting judgment from Lord Justice Moylan that it had not. Now, this judgment improved environmental protection by allowing councils to consider like end-use emissions from fossil fuel projects, unlike the High Court stance. But however, it left a confusing outcome. And despite the climate emergency, local councils could still choose whether or not to assess these emissions in their environmental impact assessments unless it's deemed unlawful under public law. So we were like, you know, what do we do? You know, like, we have been turned down so many times. We looked at that judgment, we thought it stood quite well, but we were like, yeah, we didn't know what to do. And we decided to, regardless, we put our appeal into the Supreme Court for it's £500. Let's just put it in and see what happens. And of course, by the time that came through, we had made up our minds to push on. And we had 3 new parties that had got permission to formally intervene in our Supreme Court hearing. It was the Office for Environmental Protection. It was the first case that they had intervened in. Greenpeace, and very telling was the West Cumbria Mining Limited, because that was the firm who wanted to dig the first deep coal mine in the UK. So in June of last year, we gathered for our hearing, and we could not help but feel positive after hearing our barrister Estelle Dion give her closing speech, because she nailed them to the wall. So our lawyers told us it could be up to a year before the decision, and we did not think for a second that it would be a year. You can see from this photo here on the left, we've got James Knapp. We've got Rowan Smith from Lead A. You've got myself. We've got Vicky Elcote from Weald Action Group. It was Vicky and James that first went to go and see the barrister to see whether we had the case. We had Sarah Finch, who kindly stepped forward to this case. We've got Mark Willers, Estelle Dion, I can't remember that person. We've got Ruchi and Carol Day. What an absolute amazing legal team. And then, you know, of course, you know what happened, and I'm going to show this video from Real Media. Real Media is an independent media company, and I'm going to share their socials because I think we all need to be thankful for the independent media outlets. And I would just like to say before I play this video that while you'll watch this and you see everyone getting so excited, while we were sitting in the court, we were told that we had to be really silent for the next case and that we weren't allowed to make the noise. So we had to wait for like 3 to 5 minutes, like paralyzed, while we knew what the outcome was without being able to celebrate. So it was actually quite amusing to see this video, and I'm going to play that now.
Can't hear it.
Volume, yeah, need volume. Lorraine, not sure.
From Horse Hill, our indirect impact of that project for the purpose of environmental impact assessment. We always thought it was obvious. Turns out the Supreme Court agree with us. The judgment is a relentlessly logical exposition of why it is obvious that the harmful emissions from burning fossil fuels are the effects of commercial extraction of those fossil fuels.
Make no mistake, this is a truly momentous day for the residents of Surrey Hills, the future of the planet, and the success of climate change litigation around the world.
We've got Rosebank, we've got Cumbria, you know, we've even got Biscathorpe up in Lincolnshire. There's all these cases that are pinning on the result of this. And so it is a huge impact. Fossil fuel managers are going to have to take account of the end-use emissions, and they were concerned about that. That's why White Stevens promoter got himself involved in this case. Their arguments and the arguments of the developer and the Secretary of State, Michael Gove, have all been rejected by the Supreme Court.
Climate change is a global problem precisely because there is no correlation between where the greenhouse gases are released and where climate change is felt.
The majority said, quote, "You can only care about what you know about." The legal duty to provide full information to decision makers about the harmful climate impacts of burning fossil fuels and to give the public the right to engage with and argue with and interact with that evidence and that information is a prerequisite for democratic decision-making. No longer will any planning authority be allowed to wade through fossil fuel production without fully considering the climate impact. We are unstoppable. A case like this, we will consider to make sure that our collective need for a livable planet comes before the oil and gas industry's need for endless unchecked profit.
So as you can see, it was just completely overwhelming. Like, we had started out with Horse Hill, and as I explained, all of those 4 points, and it eventually came around an environmental impact assessment, which means that, of course, it was all of like, you know, that affected all fossil fuel developments. So I'm just gonna right. So yeah, it was like 5 years in the making, that and we won, and as I said, we still can't believe it, you know, we're still kind of walking on air. You know, the court ruled that Surrey County Council breached environmental law owing to its failure to consider the inevitable greenhouse gas emissions from burning the oil, and that's its end use, which is likely to be used in transport. It's called Scope 3 emissions. And that in future, these Scope 3 emissions need to be accounted for in any future environmental impact assessment. I mean, it is not rocket science. I mean, as you could see what Sarah said on that video, why did it take us so long to get this decision? But in a way, we feel that the fact that we took it to Supreme Court meant that we had this amount of press. It has not stopped. It has been unbelievable. You know, it's a critical blow to the fossil fuel industry. I would love to be in those rooms to hear them, what they're discussing about how they're going to deal with our case, because I can't see how they're going to put like a foot forward, you know. And this, I feel, was exactly what the climate movement needed. You know, I feel as a climate activist that I have been taking a 1 step forward and 2 steps back. And this was like, you know, this was a win for all of us. And, you know, as we anticipated, there will be serious knock-on effects from our legal challenge. And with Whitehaven Coal Mine, you know, the brand new Secretary of State, first thing she did, Angela Rayner, withdrew from defending the case. And acknowledged the illegality of Michael Gove's decision. And then the mining company, like, they continued its defense, but as you all know, the application was quashed last week. The UK government also announced in August they will not defend the legal cases against Rosebank and Jackdaw Oilfields. So we are now waiting for the Rosebank decision, which their court case has been announced today, and that's going to happen on the 12th of November. Their developers will still put forward their proposals to extract oil and gas from the North Sea, but if they have to take in the development consent, which is like around, you know, the environmental impact assessment, we hope that it doesn't have a chance. So, you know, as I said, we have our fingers crossed tightly for that. I just can't keep saying how overwhelmed we are at it. You know, I just didn't believe that we would win this massively and the impact that it would have. And as I said, we're just walking on air, and we're so grateful for Sarah Finch coming forward to present us in this legal challenge. We are really lucky to have the Aarhus convention, because when we started, it's like you have a cost capping. So if you want an individual who wants to take like a big corporation to court, this convention puts into place the fact that you aren't going to be completely screwed over for money. If you go in as an individual, your cost capped at £5,000. If you go in as a group, your cost capped at 10,000. So at the time when we looked at how enormous it was and how much money we had to raise, we needed to pick someone to come forward, and Sarah kindly did that. And it was amazing that she did. She's been an amazing spokesperson for this case. So yeah, this legal challenge demonstrates, you know, like the power of community and grassroots action. And we are so proud to have this outcome. You know, it's because we are so dogged and determined that we have got where we have, and we are very proud. And this is a massive win for the climate. Thank you very much. And please ask away any questions you might have.
All right, absolutely brilliant. We've learned a lot there already. I put the Aarhus Convention there in the chat. I didn't know about that one. So, folks, if you've got a question, there's a reaction button down the bottom. You can stick a hand up like that. That helps us facilitate a bit. Who's 1, 2, 3? Who's got any questions? And so while folks are thinking there, I want to stick the hand up just to say, Lorraine, massive respect to you and every single one of the collective. I know that these things always take so many people on the front lines, and, you know, I've been there with you on some of those front lines and networking many of these things. And you don't know when you're in the middle of the trenches, in the middle of those campaigns, whether it's on the camp or, you know, trekking over to the courthouse, whether you're going to make any progress eventually, whether you're going to win. And it is such a massive win here. You've not only won for Horse Hill and the, you know, and that area, but you've won for, you know, untold other court cases in the future. There was a guy at the weekend telling me about this is a new area of law where they're going to start suing companies more. So massive respect for.
Thank you. Thank you. We have always seemed to, what I call, punch well above our weight. And you know, the next thing that we have got, hopefully, you know, we're going to try and have a look at like all of the licenses, the onshore licenses that have not been drilled, to see whether or not we can lobby for those to be dropped. And I'm going to share some of those links that I talked about. That's why I covered in quite detail about the difference in fracking. I wanted to use this time to make sure everyone was aware, because it's a separate fight. But we are going to also look at trying to change the definition of fracking so that it includes, there isn't this loophole anymore of our sites down in the south and these sites, which I'm just about to post. So you keep your eyes on all of these. But yeah, as I said, I you know, it's very rare as a climate activist, you can look back at what you've done and went, hey, well, that was worth it, wasn't it?
What an amazing feeling.
So,
well
yeah,
done.
over to questions.
Over to Brian in East Devon.
You know, it's truly inspirational, and from a sort of nature point of view, I haven't thought this through, but I'm thinking that when a new agricultural concern comes online, we can probably use you as an initial success to go about trying to stop things like new chicken farms polluting streams and so on and so forth. And so I thank you sincerely for what you've given us. The other point is I've been very much involved with freedom of information requests from the EFRA Parliamentary Select Committee about what they're going to do about the Restore Nature, about the State of Nature report. And all I get back is they are not going to answer because of parliamentary privilege. Now, given that this occurred between governments when it was just civil servants sitting in EFRA, no politicians, This is disgraceful. But the Information Commissioner agrees that they have the right to claim parliamentary privilege when refusing to answer freedom of information requests. And that's a huge stumbling block as far as I'm concerned, because you get to the stage, although someone like Lee Day undoubtedly would be interested in taking on the case, if it's an individual, you're just priced out of the market. So your fundraising is another inspiration. So I thank you sincerely for all of that.
Great. Can I just come back at a couple of those points, Brian? Yeah, absolutely. Like, we had to keep very, quiet, because in part in the judgment, Holgate talked about, like, if this environmental impact assessment was given, what would it stop our steelworks? Would it stop all of these things? So there was a number, the judges that ruled against us, that they talk about that quite a bit. And so we never talked about that in our social media, about the fact is to close everything down, because we just wanted to concentrate on fossil fuels. And even with Gatwick, I don't know whether, like, maybe Neil can chip in later because he knows a little bit about Gatwick, but they've also got part of that judgment in there. So again, it can be used on quite a number of things. Secondly, within regard to your freedom of information request, it does take time, but regardless of what answer you get, I would take it to the IOC. As I said, it could be like a year or whatever, but keep, like, they'll say one thing, but who is it? Is it the information office? Dennis will know, he does quite a few freedom of information requests. But yeah, just take it forward. Don't let the answer that you get from the government be the final one at all. As I said, it may take some time. Don't let them beat you on that.
Yeah, I've gone as far as tribunal,
right?
And you get the judge actually giving you a lot of encouragement, saying you've got lots of points which are very valid, and this is beneficial just for strengthening the argument. It all accumulates and goes forward, but ultimately the decision basically of the judge is that no, there's nothing you can do.
Right, I see.
Nothing you can do.
You're taking it that far.
So yeah. Then it's the High Court. Then it's a minimum, I think, £14,000, and you have to be represented. It all gets out of reach for an individual. You do need a lot of people behind you.
It does. And there was one thing that I have learned through the fundraising that we have done, because I also had to raise like 35,000 for the injunction when that happened, and that was through crowdfunding. And there are people out there with deep pockets. There are a lot of philanthropic, I can't even think of the word. There are a lot of people out there who want, they're not willing to do the work, but they are willing to provide the money. And it is a case of like locating. There was one idea that I thought of, literally just like buying, like, or going online to have a look at the Forbes richest list, and then going to see like how many of them lived close by, and who we could target. And I mean, Law for Change, who came through for the Supreme Court, they saw that £45,000 was a very, very cheap way of trying to change the law. And because for them, it's just like £45,000, it's nothing. So the fundraising aspect is very daunting, but it is about making contacts, and there are people out there with money. It's just about finding them,
Okay.
Inspiration. Thank you.
Very inspirational fundraiser. Well, I think welcome to Kez, and Habiba's got her hand up. And if you do want a question, Kez, it's the react down the bottom, or anyone else to raise a hand like that. Habiba, a question, a comment, or feedback? Doesn't have to be a question, folks. Habiba, can you hear us?
I think she might be on mute. That's what the problem was last time.
Are you on mute? Habiba, do you want to unmute and then say something? Did you have a question, a comment, or? Hello, Earth Calling Habiba, are you with us? All right, Habiba, beam in if you can. If not, just jump in and say. You have to unmute to say something. You've got your hand up. Maybe she's making a cup of tea. Okay, all right. Helen's popped in there for now with a question. Helen?
Hiya. I just wondered if Lorraine, you working at all with Andrew Boswell on his challenge?
No, we've had Sarah Finch is in contact with Andrew. He has shared a lot of his stuff. I think he's got quite a few challenges on. I think he failed the streets one, but I think Sarah has very few conversations with him, but you know, we have been in contact, and I'm not entirely sure, I have to be honest, of the whole group of legal challenges that he has.
Yeah, it's the one against carbon capture and storage.
Right, okay. Yeah, well,
because they're using it as a reason to carry on with basically using gas and burning
absolutely
whatever. Yeah, and there's not many people have contributed to his fundraiser. He's a long way off getting the money for it.
Yeah, there is, you know, when you start off a crowdfunder, it's almost like how it is with algorithms. It's like pushing a snowball down a hill.
Yeah,
you have to kick it off with as much momentum as possible. When we did it, I literally produced this toolkit. We created all the social media posts, we did the videos, we put everything into place, we wrote what people had to say, we sent it out. I sent it out to every single person on my mailing list. We got our groups, we got all of our Facebook groups to literally remove their banner from their Facebook and replace it with a picture, so that it was just everywhere, you know. And you have that momentum, and when you kick off that crowdfunder, you get everyone to put into that pot the moment that you like start it. And there is just something about the algorithms, as I said, once it starts, it flows. If you do not push that momentum into the beginning, you will have a failed crowdfunder without a doubt. And I'm sure that Andrew has mostly been doing it for quite some time and most probably exhausted all the pots of money, and he does mostly need to seek out private funding and go around and network and speak to people who can offer maybe larger sums of money.
Okay, is that good for you, Helen?
Yeah.
So just to say a few bits, I really there's a very good webinar done about a year ago now by a guy called Quentin. If you look it up on Climate Emergency Centre YouTube channel, and he says, he goes into it like Lorraine has gone into it in a real science. If you want it to work, you've got to find, you know, 20 people who are going to give 50 quid and 15 people are going to give 20 quid, and you hit it straight away. And there's a science to it of all the different posts designed before you do it.
Interesting to know, yeah.
Have a look on Climate Emergency Centre YouTube channel, it's there. So just a few bits there, you know, absolutely incredible, you know, work that you and all the folks have done there, Lorraine. Just trying to get the, you know, I've done a lot of representing ourselves in court and arguing right up to the High Court against various things. But so any councils in breach of environmental law by failing to take action of end-use emissions in any future environmental impact assessment. But then you said there was some limitations to that, because can someone bring this case law from the Supreme Court to like a waste incinerator, which someone's chatting about here, or other things other than oil? Where is the boundaries? It's a very good, hopefully we can test it and use it more, but what you said, they put some slight boundaries on it?
Yeah, that was in the beginning. That was the dissenting ruling. And we actually, because we've been so enamored with the win, most of us actually haven't read properly the dissenting judges of Sales and I can't remember his other name. So those sort of things, Phoenix, will be like a test case to see. And even with oil and gas development, you know, like to have an environmental impact assessment, you have to be a certain size and you actually have to claim that you are going to produce a certain amount of oil. So there's a lot of small groups, and this is for production as well. So you get a lot of small sites that actually won't be covered by this at all. But like for a waste incinerator, you know, all of those will be like test cases. And, you know, it's fingers crossed that they will use this. I mean, it is a shame that we've had to use like the courts you know, for this, because obviously, like, you know, the parliamentarians do not like the judges coming in and wading all over what they have decided. But you know, this is the highest court in the land, and this is final. So we are looking forward to these test cases, and let's hope that they have a dynamite legal team. I can see that Neil has got his hand up, and he works with waste incineration. So Neil, do you have a point to make?
Go for it, Neil.
Yeah, I was going to offer a comment on the Gatwick case and on waste incineration, because actually they're coupled up. Actually, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes,
Yes.
loud and clear.
Yeah. So for the Gatwick planning inquiry, which is just finished, I was invited by the local campaigners to put in a submission on the waste planning for Gatwick and the implications for their waste planning, and I found out that that according to Gatwick's own waste planning, expansion of Gatwick would result in about another 6,000 tons of CO2 being emitted every year from the Newhaven incinerator, which is where they will be sending quite a lot of their waste. And now, you know, 6,000 tons of CO2 doesn't sound a lot, but over 20, 30 years, that would actually mount up. You know, so over 10 years, that would be about 60,000 tons, 20 years. So you're getting up to 120,000 tons, double that, and you're getting up close to 250,000 tons of CO2. I did think it was worth putting that into the planning inquiry, bearing in mind that the expansion at Gatwick is wholly optional. It is actually not really required. They, in my opinion, haven't made a strong economic case to expand Gatwick. So the planning inspectors will have to weigh the damage done by those CO2 emissions against the claimed benefits from expanding the airport. The interesting little issue which I'm waiting for the planning inspectors to come back with when they issue their report at the end of November. CO2 emissions from waste incinerators are not considered under the category of waste. They're under the category of generating energy. And so the CO2 emissions from waste incinerators have been historically underreported and underestimated because they fit into a different category. They're treated the same as power stations, whether coal-powered or gas-powered or wind-powered or solar-powered. So it's a somewhat ridiculous situation that you have waste which is being increased directly in proportion to the increase in passengers at Gatwick. It has no real relationship to the generation of power, and yet the emissions from a waste incinerator are considered under the waste category. Now, UK Win is already trying to challenge that, actually. It's not going through the courts yet. It's actually just trying to challenge that at ministry level. But we'll see how we get, because it might end up in the courts, perhaps.
Very good. Really, you know, I was going to say, just to tell that, it's very good, Neil. Thank you very much for that info. It's always, you know, there seems to be a number of loopholes that corporations seem to know about and put things into grey areas. I was going to say a bit earlier, you know, three sides to a triangle here that we need to work very, very hard on. I went to a media conference the other week about, you know, media tell the truth about the climate situation, because we know that very few people control a lot of our media. But there's three sides to a triangle. One is, and I'm sure there's more, but there's, you know, media and getting the media involved, and direct action is one of the strongest parts of the triangle. But, you know, the other part is legal. And with things like ecocide law, they brought something in Europe now that is the beginnings of bringing in kind of ecocide law, with this ruling that, you know, the Weald Action Group and all the anti-frackers massive has helped to push through. We will be able to challenge more often. I was chatting to a solicitor at the weekend, and he said he's actually moving into the area of environmental law because he feels that they're going to be able to sue more corporations and things like that for this. So this is a massive, you know, paving stone of better environmental law for the future, hopefully. And obviously there's many test cases to come and things, but very, very important. All right, folks, we're coming into the last kind of 5 minutes-ish. Abiba, you still got your hand up? Are you up for talking now? Did you need to comment or question, or you have to unmute? You have to unmute. We can't hear you. No, you have to unmute. All right. Until Abiba gets her mic sorted. We're in the last 5 minutes or so, folks, although we could go on for 5 minutes after. If there's any other questions, feedback, ideas, anything, I mean, I'm sure in your different areas there are a number of things that could be challenging for the environment that we need to pay attention to these things and see what we can challenge.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, it does feel quite sad in a way that we do all of the work that we do, with our campaigning and our direct action, and that where it really does make a difference is in the courts, because obviously that does cost money. And I always joke, I said, I always go that, if someone told me when I became a climate activist that most of my time was going to be spent raising money for lawyers, I'm not too sure how much I would want to take that forward. But as you said, Finn, it's all part of it all. Like the direct action brings the awareness, like the camps cost them money, from the moment that for UK oil and gas, I recall that their profit and loss before they served an injunction on us was like their admin cost was like 242,000 or something. By the time we finished, because obviously they want like the best barristers, then next year after they had gone through the injunction, it was like I can't remember, 1.3, 1.6 million. We are bringing this oil company to its knees, and we are fortunate that it is a tiny little oil company. It would be different if it was someone like BP or Shell. It would be a lot more intimidating, and that's why it's worked really well, because we've looked at this company, we've gone, you're small, we can take you down. You've got, you're more mouth than trousers, so that's what we, hopefully we are doing. And that is what I said earlier on, like for a lot of us, it's personal, and that's why we've been so dogged with it. Yeah, so Joe, if you got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in terms of, because I haven't been active in the Cumbria campaign, but I have been working with them to try and tell their story a bit. And the High Weald ruling had a direct and profound impact on the Cumbria coal mine decision. And I think that the case was actually waiting for your hearing to come through. And you can see the consequences of that very directly. And just the common sense arguments have come through in both of those cases, because it's like you look at what you're extracting coal and oil and gas, whatever the fossil fuel is, in order to burn it. So you have to take in that, but that was not the case until this has gone through the courts. So crazy. I just want to say big up to all of you. So good, amazing work. And it is worth pursuing things through the courts, because that can have, hopefully it'll be like a roller coaster, and more cases will now fall. So just congratulations. And
yeah, thank you very much. I mean, it was obvious that the way that the Cumbrian coal mine came in and took part in our case, and they were so because it was taken for so long, I'm conscious of time here, but as I said, we never thought it was going to take a year. The solicitors are always so cautious. And then the Cumbria coal mine was like, this is taking too long, and they got a stay from the judge, which is basically to say, we're waiting for this court case, but it's taken too long to decide, so we want to push through. And then it actually eventuated that their case was heard afterwards. So yeah, they were pinning very much. I mean, for the fact that they thought that they were going to have a carbon neutral coal mine,
Oh, the spin doctors got on that one, didn't they? So brilliant. There's so much more we could be saying, but this is a major groundbreaking legal victory, and massive respect to, it takes so much to keep these camps on the benefits, to go to the court cases, to keep plodding on through thick and thin of it. So maximum respect to Lorraine and all the crews who helped and all the camps everywhere. And just, you know, big up to all the anti-fracking crew and the Reclaim the
Big up
Power
the
crew.
anti-fracking crew.
We won that one as well, you know, and you never guess why when you're in the middle of it, delivering pallets or picking up food or making tea or whatever it is people are doing to support these things. You don't always see the wood for the trees and see that, hey, maybe we're actually going to win this one. And it's incredible when you do. And you know, direct action does get results. There's many things, you know, from the suffragettes to the road protests, to the climate camps, to Occupy, to the anti-fracking, that have won over the years and changed things a lot. So I'm going to give Lorraine the final word, but just a quick shout for the next 3 webinars. We actually managed to get ourselves a bit further ahead. I know Tim asked about booking ahead things, and maybe Julian was with us. 2nd of October next week, we've got Kabina from Prelar, which is Planetary Repairs, Action Learning and Educational Revolution. They work with a big diverse community of groups, and please come along next Wednesday to hear them. Same time, same place, 7 to 8, same web link. And the following week, one of our favourites, Ryan, we've got Pete the Temp, who is going to be talking about performance and social change movements. Done some amazing stuff, Pete the Temp, and his lyrics are all about, you know, a lot of things on the environment. And 3rd week, we've got Donica McCarthy, who we were at Parliament Square on the camps.
We were there, weren't we, Phoenix?
Awards against Iraq, and I'm going to say, yeah. Donica McCarthy on media is crucial for climate success. You know, the triangle: direct action, media, and legal. Keep going for it, folks. And setting up climate emergency centres wherever you are. We need spaces for the people to gather, to organise, to get together, and to work on the sustainable futures we want to see, build the resilient communities. All right, over to Lorraine for final words, and thank you so much for coming. I know you're full of a lot of stuff, so brilliant, brilliant webinar.
Thank you. My last words is, look, you know, this win is for all of us. We really needed it. And secondly, Phoenix, you know, to keep running these webinars every Wednesday, you know, well done. You've always just been about the networking. So appreciate you putting this time together. And thank you so much for coming and listening. Take care.
Brilliant. All right. Well, we always need more help, support, funding, and all the rest for anyone out there watching and whatever the word is. All right. Thank you very much. You're going to stop the recording there. You're welcome to stay around for 5-10 minutes and just chat on if you want, or beam off if you're going to make tea. You can put 3 words in the chat if you want. I'm just going to find the stop recording one. There we go. Stop recording.